Audio Unleashed.
Oh, hey, by the way,
Yeah.
happy anniversary, dude.
Oh, is this our anniversary?
Yeah, this is our second anniversary.
That's great.
This is exciting, man. People have put up with 2 years of our ranting.
Good. They must be somehow entertained by it, or they're, or since we're one of the few podcasts out there that it's available to listen to, they're just desperate. They'll find better ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man. Well, let's keep them entertained while we've got them on the hook.
Okay.
We got some good stuff to talk about this week, including a press release that you sent me, which I have to admit, I saw download images here, and I had not done that yet. So there may be a visual element to this whole thing that changes my mind. But for now, I'm reacting to the text, and we're talking about a new streaming service, which claims to be the first of its kind, offering studio-grade audio and immersive audio formats. Why didn't any other streaming service think of that? I have no idea. But apparently it's going to be launching at Munich, high-end Munich 2025.
Coming up in a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, or, by the time this goes live, it may be like, when are we going to publish this? This will go out on the 4th. So it's like literally a couple of days after we publish this. Yeah. So anyway, we'll talk about that, give our impressions, talk about whether this thing is necessary and if it's going to succeed or not in our estimation. What do you want to talk about, bud?
I want to talk about something we've all been waiting for, or I should say something we should have anticipated is the return of 78 RPM records.
Yeah.
And I saw this in the latest edition of Audio Express, which I occasionally write for, but also subscribe to. And a guy did apparently some record label that does, old stuff, oldie music from the 20s or 30s or something, is putting out. They're putting out stuff on, normal records, but you can also get 78 RPM versions. And so he got one and he did, it's Audio Express, which is a super, super, super technical magazine. And he did a full technical breakdown of this thing with, microscopic analysis and audio analyzers and click counters and listening tests too. And I thought oh, well, we'll get into it. I have thoughts that are good thoughts, but we'll get into it.
Yeah.
And then next we are going to talk about.
Next, we're going to talk about something that we learned about because Stephen Stone was posting in a comment section on Facebook about it. But basically, what it boils down to is a review in stereo file of a new. It's this is a little difficult because we say the word DAC, digital to analog converter, although this case they call it a D/A processor. And I think most people think they know what we're talking about, but this is a gigantic rack of gear that costs, well, for now, at least $267,500. And its entire function is to take a digital audio signal and convert it to analog exactly the way the little $10 chip in your phone does.
Yeah.
But this is, nearly 300,000 or over 300,000 if you want CD, SACD transport. Again, for now, when we're recording that, tomorrow it could be, 300 million. There's just no way to know right now.
True.
But anyway, we're going to dig into that. We're going to dig into the review. We're going to dig in, I guess, a little to the technical aspects of this thing. Although I have to admit, I don't fully understand all of the technical spin on this thing. Also going to talk about the comments section because contrary to all reasonable advice, we read the comment section and it was something, buddy. It was something. But anyway, when we're done with that, we got to keep our patrons happy. What are we going to talk about for them?
Yeah, well, fortunately, the king of all audio media, well, one of the co-kings, he's the king of European audio media, and that's John Darko, because the king of American audio media is Steve Guttenberg. So these two kings, Darko reviewed, you may recall, or, sharp-eared listeners may recall that we trashed the Musical Fidelity X-Tube tube buffer thing a few episodes ago. We didn't necessarily trash it, but we trashed the marketing of it, which was complete nonsense.
Yeah.
And so John Darko got one to try, and he had some bad experiences. And he had, although they were, nothing that we actually talked about. It's actually problems with the product itself. We talked about problems with the marketing of the product and the whole idea of the product. This is actual physical, problems with the design of the product. Which is just supposed to be a tube buffer stage. It's not supposed to do anything except for pass your audio through tubes. And he took an interesting lesson from this, but I thought it deserved a lot more discussion than what he gave it. Yeah. And we can discuss, and we can bring a lot of personal experience to that, because I know I've been through that a lot, and maybe you have too. I'm sure you have.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Yes, so, I have.
Let's talk about this exciting new streaming service that I'm just dying to get.
Pure Audio. You know what? Let's just start by reading the deck from this press release, and then maybe the first paragraph, just to set the stage for people.
Okay.
So the deck is: high fidelity streaming service offers a first listen to studio grade audio ahead of its official midsummer launch. Munich, Germany, May 1st, 2025. Pure Audio Streaming, the world's first lossless and immersive streaming service, which what? No. Has announced an exclusive early adopter program for audiophiles set to debut at high-end Munich 2025, May 15th through 18th. As the premier platform for studio quality, lossless, immersive surround sound, and binaural audio, Pure Audio Streaming is built for purists who demand uncompromising fidelity. The service delivers hardware-optimized playback for high-end AV systems and exclusive high-resolution content, positioning itself as the ultimate streaming solution for discerning audio enthusiasts. I mean, I guess the only thing in that I don't think is controversial is that if they're really doing surround sound, like multi-channel surround, that's distinctive. That's, and looking at the hardware supported here, I mean, there's a limited number of devices that can even sort of stream this thing, and it's like, they may be not putting multi-channel here, but in every other regard, I mean, basically every streaming music service except for Spotify at this point is offering lossless. Qobuz offers high res. Apple has made its name on immersive audio. So
and you can get multi-channel. You can get the full multi-channel stream off of an Apple TV.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. That's true. So
you can't. It's not just a 2-channel headphone Atmos, virtualized stream. It's full on. I've done it.
I forgot. You're absolutely right about that. Because I've done it too. Listening to, what was I listening to? King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard's Butterfly 3000, I think, maybe in Atmos. But so like, are we just at this state in the world where, you and I come on here and like, we're the first podcast to ever talk about hi-fi. We're the first. Nobody's done it before. Nobody can lay claim to being an audiophile podcast, but we are. Is that just where we are in the world now? Is that what we do? We just say that we're the first when we aren't?
Well, I gotta point out that I look at this like it's like a Pure Audio Streaming early adopter program. So, because they want to guarantee a serious, passionate community of listeners, and in return, you'll receive exclusive access, a full year of streaming, and the opportunity to blah blah. But it's not free. It's $500 for. When they give you, if they give you, it only works apparently on the NVIDIA Shield TV Pro, which is like a TV streaming device.
Yeah, I've got one. It's a good streamer, but it is old. Like it is ancient at this. Like everybody's saying, the NVIDIA Shield is like got to be the next thing to be updated, because I don't know, they haven't made any changes to it since like, I don't know, 2018 or 2019. It's ancient in terms of streaming hardware. There's like, it won't even decode like the AV1 or VP9 codecs, video codecs, right?
So this is not something you want to buy.
I mean,
Probably.
you want to wait for the next version, right? Apparently, there is a new NVIDIA Shield Pro coming. But I do want to say, like, digging into the fact, although they only mention the NVIDIA Shield in a lot of their, forward-facing literature, if you dig into the fact, there are more supported devices. Like, it does the NVIDIA Shield Pro, not the NVIDIA Shield, but the NVIDIA Shield Pro. It does the Amazon Fire Stick 4K, but only 2023 version or later. It does Mac and Windows computers using the Chrome browser, but only via HDMI, and Mac devices must be from 2021 or later.
Oh, boy.
AC Connect enabled devices, I don't know what those are. And then they repeat again the Amazon Fire Stick 4K. So yeah, very limited hardware support, but it is more than just the NVIDIA Shield Pro.
Okay, but it's still very, very limited. And also, it's $300 to be one of the early adopters. If you already have your NVIDIA Shield Pro, and that's for 1 year of streaming. So what is that? That's way more than the cost of any other streaming service I'm aware, any other, audio streaming service I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's like $25 a month, man.
Yeah, compared to most everything is, $12 a month or something. So, and I got to say, all the other streaming services, the content's more or less the same. This thing, the content is, all like audiophile-y stuff. And, they have Oro 3D on there. And, I guess maybe they're the first streaming service with Oro 3D. I don't follow Oro 3D, but, whatever. And it's
big in Europe, not very big here.
But they only go up to 96K, which granted is plenty. But, some, Qobuz goes up to 192K. I don't know what Apple goes up to. And they don't offer a DSD option. Apparently, I couldn't care less about DSD, but some people care. And they've got like 300 plus audiophile favorites. So it's not like they even have, I don't know, Beyonce or whatever on there, right? Or Ed Sheeran or something. It looks like they have stuff from AIX Records, which is, nice. It's well recorded stuff by Mark Waldrop.
Mark has put some good stuff out there, man. Yeah.
And 2L Records, which I can't remember what that is, but that's an audiophile thing from, I think, Germany or somewhere. And a few other things, but it's kind of like, it's just audiophile-y stuff. So the whole thing is just like, boy, the sales pitch on this to me is just like, okay, a bunch of artists I probably haven't heard of, and they may be fine artists, but, I when I need to get my, REM fix or whatever, they're not going to be on there. And when I want to, when I hear stuff on KSER, my local Everett, Washington station, and I'm like, ooh, that's cool, because they play all kind of stuff. And I go on Qobuz, I'm like, oh, here's this guy's albums. I can listen to them. There's none of those options here. For $25 a month for the early adopters, if you already have this NVIDIA thingy, which only weirdos have that.
Hey, that's my favorite streamer, man.
Actually,
that's how I run my server.
Friend of the pod, Terry Landry, has one too. So
because of me,
anyway.
I think. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. But
I'm the one that turned him on to it.
Anyway, so I mean, some people have, but it's just, this is a really strange pitch, and the only thing that seems exclusive to me is that they have all this audiophile stuff, a lot of which is pretty hard to find on streaming services. And maybe that would be your pitch, is you're like, hey, you know what? A lot of this stuff is not on streaming services, but we have made deals with, audiophile record labels, and we have all this stuff, and we're putting it in. I would say, well, let's up the ante. Let's go to 24. Whatever double 192 is. And what is that, 380 something?
384, I think is, yeah,
384. I should know all this. But, let's up the ante and do all this crazy stuff that would interest audiophiles. This is kind of like, okay, well, it's not really anything better than, it's like Apple with radically less content, with, probably a millionth of the content.
Yeah. And they don't pander nearly enough in the press release or on the website. I mean, look, these people need to consult with, they need to consult with us as to how to reach the audiophile market, because what you really got to do is convince them that, oh, you're special enough to really understand what we're doing here, right? You're special enough to hear the differences. And they're just not doing enough of that in their messaging.
No, or they could just, they could throw some money at, an audiophile influencer. Like, let's say Mark Levinson, right? And get his endorsement. I mean, they honestly, I think most of the real audiophile guys, I mean, like I don't think you can go to Michael Fremer and throw him money. And I mean, yeah, you can probably like advertise on whatever that website is. Tracking angle.
Yeah.
And just like any other audiophile publication, it's like, you throw them some ad dollars, at least they're probably not going to trash your product, or at least if your product sucks, they'll be like, this thing sucks. I don't want to review it. Yeah. You can't like just buy as much as people think you can buy all these audiophile writers. For the most part, you really can't. And there are probably some lightweight influencers who, a lot of these lightweight influencers you can, who are not the real heavy duty, not people like, Aaron or Joe Mariano or somebody like that, people that are, who's that guy, Linus something? I can't remember. He kind of digs in. He's actually, I think, got measurement capability and stuff. But those guys, you pay them like $10,000 to be featured on there.
Wow. Well, we are in the wrong business, buddy.
Well, and PR people have told me. I have a good friend in PR who regales me with stories about how much his company has paid to get featured by all these people.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
That's where the money is.
I really got to find a way to get over my social anxiety so we can do more video, man. We're leaving money on the floor just because I'm ugly.
You're not ugly. You look a lot better than me these days. But no, it's look, the opportunities in doing what we do, the opportunities are Wirecutter, YouTube, in my opinion, because nobody else is making a living.
Yeah.
I mean, the editors, the two people that actually run most of these publications nowadays are eking out a living, but it's just not. So anyway, why are we talking about this? Because of Pure Audio, the new standard in immersive listening. Anyway, I could tell people, hey, go check this thing out, but wait and see. And you know what? I mean, it's going to be at Munich.
Yeah.
Darko might talk about it. Stereophile might talk about it.
Yeah.
Soundstage might talk about it. See what
also,
they say.
You know what? If we're missing some angle on this thing, and that there is a new feature that comes out that is like, oh, hey, that might be worth checking out. People don't buy an NVIDIA Shield Pro now. There is a new one coming eventually. Like, there's got to be. Like, these hardware companies do not let hardware age as much as this device has until they're ready. I mean, look, Apple's updating their Apple TV every year or two. Roku's doing the same. NVIDIA Shield's really long in the tooth, so don't go buying one now. There's got to be a new one coming soon.
But is the big question is the NVIDIA Shield TV Pro compatible with the DCS Varese music system D-to-A processor for $300,000? Does it have a digital output?
You did it, buddy. You broke my brain. Well, it's HDMI output. So
is this thing?
Anyway,
we'll get to that thing soon enough.
Yeah, we got to take a step back in time before we get there, though, man.
We do. We're going to go way back. We're going to go back 100 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Before we do that, let's announce. We normally wait for the closing credits to do this, but this week we're doing some music not by us. This is going to be some music by our good friend Michael Gaughn, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the credits. So, but new tunes from Mike.
Enjoy. And we're back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we are going to talk about the topic that's on the tip of everyone's tongue these days in vinyl. And that's 78 RPM records, which is something that I should have known would come back.
Yeah.
But never really thought it would. But here it is.
I blame Mark Smotroff for this whole thing.
Why? What did he do?
Because Mark always posts on social media, like what records he's listening to right now. He'll just do like, oh, hey, I'm spinning this. And it's a kind of this neat little thing to see. But like he also has a different record player for 78s. And he's always sort of looking through thrift shops and things like that and swap meets for 78 records. So he's the only person I know who regularly listens to 78s.
Wow.
Yeah, he's
my dad used to have a bunch. My dad had a bunch. I don't know where he got them. He had a big stack, and they were literally in a stack. They did not have sleeves on them.
Ooh.
And he would like put them in the sink and wash them off.
Wow.
It didn't really. And they're made from shellac, so they're really fragile, so they shatter. I mean, vinyl records, as I learned when I worked at Spin Magazine, if you take a vinyl record and you frisbee it into a wall, it shatters. That was one of the popular things to do at Spin, because you got so many records and so many of them were just from crappy bands. And I had a record player, and me and there were a couple of interns there would play them. And we were in kind of like this bullpen area, and we'd play them if it was stupid, which it was more than half the time. We'd fling it into the wall and they'd shatter. But these shellac records, I mean, you just tap them on a table and they'll break,
Yeah. The slow-mo guys did a thing one day. Did you ever watch the slow-mo guys on YouTube?
No.
There's a couple of Brits who live in Texas, of all places, and they have a bunch of like super crazy industrial high-speed slow-motion cameras, like thousands of frames per second, and they will just destroy things and do it in slow-mo. Like sometimes they're shooting a bullet through, I don't know, metal, or sometimes they're dropping marbles into magma. But they did one where they put a 33 1/3 record on some sort of gyroscope thing, and what they were trying to figure out is like, how fast do you have to spin the record before it'll break? And they literally broke an LP with centrifugal force and filmed it in ultra slow motion. So I'll try to find that and put it in the show notes so people can check it out.
Okay, so anyway, what we have here is, this was written by a guy named Michael Harkins in Audio Express, which is a super ultra technical audio journal that I write for about once a year or something. And I was very honored that they invited me to write for them, but I don't write that much stuff for them, headphone stuff. And so this guy found this label, which is, the label is, what are they called? I should know this. Rivermont is putting out a lot of really old school kind of music, right? And they have the option, you can get stuff on like 33 1/3, normal stuff. I think they offer some stuff at 45 RPM, which is the speed that singles run at, but also there's a lot of audiophile records released in 45 RPM. Yeah. And because the faster it is, theoretically, the better the quality is. Now, so this guy found these people this is not shellac, this is vinyl. And also it's stereo, it's not mono. Yeah. But it's 78 RPM, which should give you, just like running a tape at a faster speed, right? You get better fidelity. There's more, more room for more data, especially at high frequencies, right? So, however, there are some limitations here. You're supposed to, they recommend a 3 gram tracking force, which is pretty high, but not, he actually used what cartridge did he use? So they recommend like a Shure M44 cartridge, which I guess is no longer made, or a Stanton DJ cartridge, or this is not in the Rex, but Audio-Technica makes a couple of cartridges that'll track about that heavy. And actually the 3600 cartridge, which is on a lot of cheap turntables, which is really not a bad cartridge. I think the recommended tracking is 2.5, but some guys run it at 3. And on these cheap turntables, they have it at 3, 3.5, 4 sometimes, because, they want to make sure the record doesn't skip.
Right.
So anyway, it's already a problem because you got to go find a cartridge that'll do this. He used a Hana ML, which is an audiophile cartridge that I think costs, I don't know, $1,000 or something.
Wow.
So I'm not 100% sure that he got the best out of these records, although I'm also not 100% sure that he didn't get the best out of these records.
Yeah.
But his evaluation of it was fascinating because not only, normally most audiophile writers would just, put the thing on and listen to it and say it's got great, inner detail or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, but this guy did a real technical analysis, and he actually did, microscope shots of the vinyl, and it's got apparently this thing has a really long running groove that's like a 1/2 inch wide or something, which is weird. I guess it just to get the needle. Oh, I'm sorry, the stylus stabilized, and it's on red vinyl. But he found a lot of little black impurities in it, which he couldn't necessarily trace to any problems. But there's a lot of noise on these things.
Yeah.
And, he actually showed, on a scope here, on a spectrographic analysis, he showed the noise that's there. And there's a lot of noise at, I think, 27 hertz, which is, not in the music.
Right.
Because 27 hertz is really, we all think of speakers have to be 20 to 20, but 27 hertz is about the lowest note on a piano, which is a note nobody ever hits.
Right. Because it sounds like
and that's
crap.
and that's even lower than the lowest note on a 5-string bass. So, that's not so there's hum on these things. And of course, as he points out, probably most of the people that are listening to this don't have systems that are going to reproduce 27 hertz anyway.
Right.
So, okay, fine. But there's just a lot of noise on it. The clicks were way more. He used a click counter to gauge the clicks, and the clicks were much, much higher on this.
That's in the software that he uses to digitize records.
Right.
So
and he did. So he had, I think that, all right, I have the numbers right here. The disc had 2,238 corrected clicks.
Can we put some perspective on that these things only are 10 minutes aside? So you're thinking of that in terms of an LP. No. This is half the length of an LP because it's twice the speed.
Yeah, and he points out, on Bachman Turner Overdrive 2, good choice, dude, which he recorded recently, have 1,433 corrected clicks over the entire 39-minute LP.
Right.
Which is twice as long as both sides of the 78. So it's about, this thing's got something like 3 times the number of clicks, I guess, per minute that a normal album would have. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this because I was so thankful that this guy did this. Because so often, the big trend, as we've discussed a lot of times, as we've lamented a lot of times, the big trend in audio is to go back to, old stuff that was from, the 40s or 30s or whatever, single driver, full range speakers and, single ended tube amps that put out 8 watts and things like that. And even, like non-oversampling DACs, to go back to, the earliest days of CD. And there's this idea that this old stuff is automatically better.
Right.
And, have we had people when whoever the first whack job that came out with a full range speaker, I think the first one I saw, it's a big trend now, but the first one I saw was probably in the mid 90s or something, right? Maybe towards the end of the 90s. And, had Stereophile or something come out and said, look, these people are putting this speaker out and people dropped this technology 30 or 40 years ago because it sucks. And here's the technical analysis. And here's what it sounds like in our controlled listening test, which of course Stereophile listened to. And, they could have come out and said, hey, you know what? This is stupid. This just doesn't work. There's no advantage to this. The marketing spin that people are putting on this is false. And now, granted, I'm going to say here, this record company is not to my knowledge, claiming that, oh my God, this is so much better fidelity. I think they're doing it as a throwback thing. Since the music is really old school music, they kind of want to have that sort of vibe to it.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not really criticizing them. It's just, and it's a novelty thing. It's kind of fun. It's that they're trying something different. Yeah. And just like, releasing on cassette or 8-track or something. Hey, fine. Yeah. But so that's good.
Looking over the listings for this on their webpage. They're not making any claims about, superior fidelity or anything. They're just like, hey, these are 78s. That's pretty cool, huh?
It's just something we're doing just for fun, Yeah. And that's totally fine. And
totally.
But, the people that make single driver speakers are claiming that they're better. And that is false. They are worse. And you can easily judge this in double-blind listening tests. You can easily tell from the measurements. I mean, the little ones that are like 3 inches, right? Those are actually pretty good. Those actually work. But the big ones that are 7 or 8 inches and have a whizzer cone, or 12 inches or whatever, and have a whizzer cone, have like grossly aberrant, is that the word I'm looking for? Frequency response. And they don't sound natural. They don't sound good. They put a huge coloration on the music. And yet people have grafted to it because, well, they don't have a crossover. So, less is more and blah, 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 blah. And older is always better because all this new stuff is a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
And, I just wish that more audio, this guy did this article, which granted it's Audio Express, so the readership is pretty small compared to, say, a stereophile. And I don't want to criticize stereophile here because I could say the absolute sound, but the notion of the absolute sound having the technical capability to do this is laughable. Where stereophile could easily do things like this very easily, and do at least as good a job, possibly even better. But it just makes me upset that we have this culture in audio that just automatically embraces all this old stuff and just says, oh, it's better because it's old. This is the way things used to be and things were better then. And, we need to make audio great again. And, But I'm really thankful to Audio Express and to this writer for grabbing onto this and going, hey, we should talk about this right now. Yeah. And so, Michael Harkins, good job. Really good job. There needs to be more Michael Harkins in the world, whoever he is. I don't know who he is. I've never heard of him before. Let me find out who he is so we can give him proper credit. He has a degree in electrical engineering. He worked for an aerospace company and worked in the automotive and tech industries. How about that?
Wow.
So
nice.
Cool.
As you and I have been discussing off air, I definitely have more respect for people who work in the audio industry. People who can do car audio. Whew, man, you think hooking up an AV receiver is hard? Try installing a new CarPlay stereo into a car. Wow. Too many wires.
I wouldn't even think about it.
Yeah.
No way.
We'll leave that kind of foolishness to Aaron in the future.
But I will say, I got to say, I think this 78 probably sounds, I'm speculating here, but I think this 78 probably sounds better than this lathe cut thing that I got from, what was this from this group, Foods But Sushi from Whited Sepulcher Records, which we played this a couple of episodes ago, and it sounded really horrendous. And I mean, it sounded like I think you commented, it sounds like a 78.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to guess this thing sounds better than a typical 78 did because it's vinyl, and it's stereo, and it's done using relatively modern techniques and stuff. So it's probably better. I would actually kind of like to hear it. I mean, I don't want to buy it, but I'd like to hear it.
Now, my record player my turntable won't spin at 78, so I'm kind of like, I'm good.
I don't think mine will either, but I test a lot of these cheap record players for Wirecutter, and I bet you I don't really normally look at that, but I do remember we did comment that one of them does 78s, so there's still 78 stuff out there, but this is something that does not need to be explored.
No. Anyway, it's cool, and it's pretty. I like that they're using red vinyl. anyway. Anything more to say about this, or do you want to go start talking about $300,000 DAX, buddy?
I want to talk about oligarch Phi.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's take a break, get a drink of water, and we'll be right back to talk about something utterly ridiculous. Welcome back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And this time, I have a feeling at some point we're gonna need some leashes, because wow. So this like I said, we got turned onto this due to a Facebook thread discussion that I saw due to our friend Stephen Stone participating, and I believe he sent it to you. So this all started with a review in stereo file by Jason Victor Cernas of the DCS Veres music system D to A processor. So they don't just call it a D to A converter, it's a D to A processor. As I said in the intro, as reviewed, this thing is $267,500. It is $305,000 with the SACD/CD transport. Again, all of those prices as of May 6th. Like, things are changing so quickly. We just have no idea how to put a price tag on anything at this point, at least in the US. But that's what they sell for now. I'm jumping all over the conversation here. But what was the thing that stood out to you first? Like, why did you put this in the idea board other than the obvious?
Well, we should comment. This is a DAC, which is, you can go buy a DAC for $10. And it's a little tiny thing. It's the size of a cigarette pack or something. And this is also a DAC, but it is 5 components. It's got, I guess, the bottom one, which is the size of a typical like 300 watt per channel amp, is the power supply, I believe. And then there's 2.
It's like the size of a 300 watt multi-channel amp, like a 5-channel amp. It's huge.
And then there's, I gather, 2 separate chassis for 2 mono DACs, basically. So left channel, right channel.
Right.
Is that right? And then what's the rest of this stuff too?
Above that
is a clock,
a master clock, clock. And then above that is the user interface box, which basically sort of communicates with you. So you use this app as a remote control, and this communicates with your device via Bluetooth. So there's no Wi-Fi. You connect via Bluetooth to the app and control it. So that's the third box, which is as big as not the first box, but the other 3.
Now, so I will say, beautiful industrial design,
gorgeous,
machined aluminum front panels, and they have this sort of swooping, curving design that is different on each one. This is a world-class piece of industrial design. This is really good-looking stuff.
Yeah.
Now, that said, and the metalwork involved in this, let me do my metalwork estimate. And I know a little bit about this because I've worked with high-end audio manufacturers on marketing and stuff. I'm going to guess there's probably 30 grand worth of metalwork in this thing. That's their cost. Okay.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I mean, it really is spectacular. So, and I think that the people that buy this are going to, the spectacle is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And, there's something kind of cool about that. Like I remember I went to Jonathan Scull's apartment in New York, and who used to write for Stereophile and is one of the most delightful and amusing people to ever be in the audio business. And he had a 6-component. He had a preamp that filled an entire rack, and it was mono, 2 mono chassis. It was separate power supplies for each one, and then and then 2 phono pre's. Left and right phono pre. 6 chassis. It filled an entire rack. It was so funny. But anyway, so, whatever. It's over the top and everything. But
yeah,
I think what people took exception to in the comments section, and the comment section was really polarized. On every comment section I saw on this was really polarized. With some people saying, this is stupid. And the other people saying, have you heard it?
Yeah.
And we've heard that before.
Mm-hmm.
Have I heard people saying, have I heard it? Yes, I have heard that.
Yeah.
But just to give you an example, let's say you, Dennis Berger, called me up and said, Brent, I got a new saxophone and I'm practicing all day and I'm better than John Coltrane. I don't need to hear you to know that you're not better than John Coltrane. Okay, because I understand. What if I
practice for 2 days?
I understand music theory. I understand how heavy Coltrane was. I understand from knowing lots of sax players how hard it is to get an amazing sound like he got, and to have the sort of and how many years it takes to develop the kind of dexterity and command he had of his instrument. And you can't do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, almost nobody can do it, even if they put themselves to it. So I don't need to, since we already have a paucity of double-blind controlled tests that show the differences among DACs, right? I mean, there's a couple here and there. I mean, you can hear the difference between digital filters. But again, digital filters are not expensive to implement. You don't need to spend $30,000 to get a certain digital filter. And it's all a matter of preference anyway. So, we basically have
by the way, I did look into the digital filters of this one, and it took a little looking, but I found a review in Hi-Fi News, or I found a PDF reprint that DCS did of a Hi-Fi News review. And this thing has got like 6 filters for PCM. I got to say 5 of them look pretty technically sound to me. They're the 5 of them are linear phase. They roll off, quite, you look at it and go, oh yeah, that's a perfectly legitimate digital filter. And then one of them is a minimum phase filter that, is best I can tell from looking at the graph, starts rolling off at around 3 kilohertz.
Okay.
Like, you're going to hear that. Like, you're going to,
you'll hear that. Yeah.
There's no way you don't hear that. But the other 5, perfectly normal, perfectly legitimate PCM filters. So I was kind of surprised to see that.
I review, headphone amp DAC dongles for Wirecutter. And these things range from about probably, you can get really simple ones for $20, but like the ones I review are, $50 to a couple $100. And, the $50 one I use, I sure can't remember the name, but it's a Shanling, I think. It has selectable digital filters, and it's $50. Okay? Yeah. So this is nothing special.
The reason I brought that up is that so many of these esoteric DACs, just the reconstruction filters are just nonsense. I'm saying at least the DCS, 5 of the 6 filters are like completely and utterly legitimate approaches to PCM reconstruction. So
sure. So we don't need to, we already have enough evidence that, if someone says they have some mind-blowing speaker, right? And they did something with the drivers and all that kind of stuff, you kind of would. If it's a standard old cones and domes tower speaker, I know it might sound good, but it's not going to be this mind-blowing thing. But, if you started doing a bunch of different things, we'd have to listen to it to know, because, we can't. But with this, because, speakers, there's a colossal amount of literature on, double-blind tests of speakers where people could tell them apart easily.
Yeah.
And with this, there's not really the scientific literature that shows that, DACs really make a big difference. I'm not saying they don't make any difference, but it's going to be pretty subtle. And, of course, people are going to listen to this and go, I heard it and it's not subtle. But if you heard it under controlled conditions, I bet $1,000 it's going to be subtle.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time picking it out because we just have a long history of you just can't. And I'm not going to say this isn't the best sounding DAC ever, but if it is not like, oh my God, everything else. What did the there's a PDF that you sent me from Hi-Fi something. What is the English magazine?
Yeah.
Hi-Fi News.
Yeah, Hi-Fi News. Yeah. And there was another one we found from Hi-Fi Plus, where they had gotten sort of initial impressions from a gentleman named Paul Soar. Apparently he wrote this email when they were still under NDA, and this was just his listening impressions that he sent to the editor or something like that.
Yeah. And it's just it's just so slobbery. It's like, I am so privileged to have heard this thing and blah, blah, blah. It's like this guy is angling for a position in Donald Trump's cabinet. I mean, it is just like so over the top. It just really sickened me, kind of, to tell you the truth.
Well,
but
it's kind of nonsense. I mean, let me read this paragraph. What struck me was timing information that completely changed a good but not outstanding musical performance into one that was engaging, involving, and demanded my full attention. In some magical ways, the Verrace presented micro-timing information that was previously unknown to me, multi-layered with color and texture, dramatically elevating my emotional response to the music. I mean, the first thing that I thought of when I read that was colorless green ideas sleep furiously. I mean, it is just, it's nonsense. Are you familiar with that phrase?
I am not.
You're not a big Chomsky fan, I know. So, but that was a famous phrase from Chomsky's first book on syntax, when he was sort of revolutionizing the way we think about how language works in the brain. Colorless green ideas sleep furiously is a logically coherent sentence, grammatically speaking, in terms of the way language works, but it doesn't mean anything, right? So I immediately, these are just a pile of words that don't actually tell me anything.
Yeah.
But there are people who are going to read that and think it's profound.
Yeah. And I'm looking at this Hi-Fi News review, and it's different in that the sentences mean something, but as so often with these reviews, you could, forklift the same exact text onto the review of a $99 topping DAC, and no one would know the difference. I mean, the pull quote here is, "Lay down Sally simply boogied into the room."
Wow.
I mean, that is just meaningless. These people, I'm sorry, who is this guy? Paul Miller that runs this thing? I'm sorry.
Andrew Everard, I think, did the review, and Paul Miller maybe did the measurements.
But but he's the editor and owner, I think, of it. It's like, this is baloney. The ARP synthesizer growled and flew high. It's like, this is just meaningless, stupid garbage. Again, you could just forklift this language onto any DAC review of any DAC, and no one would know the difference.
No. Although he says this, after just that one track, it would be possible to identify what this new DCS digital system achieves. In plain terms, it makes everything else, analog or digital, sound just a bit fake, in that you can tell what the electronics are doing. Now, I'll be following this guy's career from here on out, and his next review, I expect him to literally start, well, I mean, this is a fine component, but it all sounds a little artificial. I'm sorry, I've heard the DCS, I can never go back, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but he's not going to do that, because he knows his readers are going to have forgotten by the next issue that this thing literally revolutionized the way he heard music.
Yeah, I got to say, this is a little off topic, but the Stereophile review had measurements from Paul Miller. I think it basically took Paul Miller's measurements, because Paul Miller owns both publications. It took Paul Miller's measurements, and I guess, this is a big thing to ship, and it's $300,000. So I guess they didn't ship one to, John Atkinson didn't have a chance to measure it, and would cost a lot of money and who knows what. But Paul Miller's measurements were on there, and his text was on there, and I'll tell you what, man, we are going to miss John Atkinson. We are really going to miss John Atkinson when he eventually retires. And he's well into his 70s now. And I mean, John's everything he writes, even his measurement stuff, is just clear as a bell. It's like totally clear. You don't need a lot of technical knowledge to understand what he explains everything so well and explains all the, like, here's why this matters or here's why this doesn't matter. And this was just a big, Paul Miller's thing was just a big data dump. And I was looking at another Stereophile also had a review of the new Watt Puppy, which Martin Collins, famous English audio writer, did. And Paul Miller did the measurements for that. Again, it's like gobbledygook. I mean, I'm a speaker measurement expert. I'm reading this going, man, I know John Atkinson's not listening to this, but oh my God, are we going to miss him?
Yeah.
I mean, he was my idol. That's who I idolize in terms of my tech write-ups, trying to explain everything I did. And Sound and Vision kind of let me do that. And Soundstage definitely let me do that, and encouraged me to do it, even though they don't. But I mean, I can't read the Soundstage measurements, and the speaker measurements have no explanation. The electronics is just it's too much of a data dump. And, this can be written about in an interesting way that's clear to normal people and not just to engineers. And I'm someone who's done these measurements. I mean, but it's like some of the stuff I don't understand how this is relevant. Anyway, so I'm a little off track there, but.
Though the measurements do give you some indication of like, what are the technical specifications behind this supposedly drastic increase in sound quality? And he's comparing like the different specifications to the Vivaldi Apex DAC, right? And it's like second harmonic distortion has gone from 0.00004% to 0.00003%, and signal noise ratio has gone from 117.1 dB, which is far exceeding anything anybody would be able to hear, to 118.1 dB. So it's like, wow, really? Are we're supposed to believe that the difference between 117 and 118 dB signal to noise ratio is unlocking magical insights into the music that weren't possible before? Come on.
Have you heard it?
Touche.
The thing is, I have not heard this, but I have heard distortion at a wide variety of levels because I do CEA 2010, subwoofer measurement, and that's a measurement of output versus distortion. And you have a distortion threshold, like it can't get above. It's approximately 30%. And so I know what 30% distortion sounds like. And you can see the little meter on there, and it'll go womp womp womp, and it'll say 10% or something, or 3%. And there are situations where 0.5% distortion is audible in electronics and not audible in speakers. Speakers is more like 3-4%. But, and I've done these tests, I've measured a lot of electronics, and I've heard Bob Carver taught me that. He's like, you can see a little, if you do a sine wave and you push it up to about 1% or 0.5% or something like that, you can see the little kink in there. And that's right where most people can kind of hear it, but it's subtle. And, so I run measurements at I spec distortion at 0.5%. Do I do 0.5% or 1%? I can't remember. Stereophile, I think that's 1%. But, these tiny differences in distortion, no. And, I'm sure that the channel separation is excellent. I mean, it's separate power supplies it's a separate power supply. And it's also, separate, chassis for left and right, but it's not going to be better in a way you can hear.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe, people are going to think we're a little ignorant because, we haven't heard this thing. But, I'm sure if I went to a hi-fi show, that's the whole thing is people will go to like a hi-fi show and listen and quote unquote, listen to it. I'm sure it'll be at the Munich show and people will quote unquote, listen to it through some big fancy speakers, Wilson's or something with some big honking amp. And they'll say it sounds incredible. But, it probably could have been a $100 topping DAC if you had all these chassis and you hid a little $100 topping DAC inside one of them and A-B'd. Could you tell the difference? I don't know. Could you tell the difference between a $100 Micca speaker, M-I-C-C-A, one of a wire cutter budget pick, and a $200,000 speaker? God, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Not that the Mic is
all
bad.
All day long and twice on Sundays, yeah.
It'd be incredibly easy. Whereas with this, any serious person who really knows audio is going to say like, I don't know if you could put the topping DAC in there and do a double blind with this thing and tell the difference.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to guess you probably could. No, actually, I'm going to say probably some people under some conditions could, maybe. But,
yeah.
It's just sort of... It's, Stephen Stone, he coined the term oligarch audio, which basically means, I like to call it oligarch-fi because it's more, negative. But, and by that he means basically stuff that, audio products that are not made for actual audiophiles. They're made for rich people with more money to spend than they can possibly spend. And they might look at this, whoever, the guy with $50 billion might look at this and go like, oh yeah, that's, for him buying this is like us buying a $100 topping DAC. And, might think nothing of it and be like, oh yeah, I can put that in my room in, whatever in, Hawaii or Monaco or wherever. And I'll do that. Yeah, that'd be cool. That'll be fun.
The appeal is the fact that he's one of 1,000 people in the world who can afford it,
Right. And, they only have to sell a couple of these to make money and for it to be profitable. And, so it has nothing to do with music. It has nothing to do with audio. I mean, there's a guy in the comment section on the Stereophile thing that said, we read Stereophile because we love music. And I'm kind of like, no, you don't. I mean, look, it doesn't hurt. Honestly, getting more into audio helped get me back into music after I really didn't play music for a few years there, maybe 3-4 years. And this kind of got me back into, pulling out my Chapman stick and learning to play that thing all over again. But, here's the thing, the majority of us read Stereophile because we love music. It touches our souls, which just sounds like marketing drivel.
It is.
It's not, it's like, this is something you can read Stereophile to engage with music because they have a lot of reviews. And, Jason Victor Serenis' classical reviews are great. He's one of my favorites. Same guy that wrote this Stereophile review. But, so it's good. But like, I think if you really love music and it really touches your soul, go see some live gigs. So the musician actually possibly makes a little bit of money or doesn't lose as much money.
Yep.
And also to be live and it'll be a spontaneous and one-time event, exclusive.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Well, to all of those people who are like, well, you haven't heard it, so you can't possibly know. I tell you this, I have found the absolute best remaster of Kind of Blue. It is unlike anything you have ever heard in your entire life. It transforms the listening experience of Kind of Blue. I've put it in a teapot and I've put it in an orbit around the Earth. Now, unless you have literally searched the entirety of outer space in orbit around Earth, can you really say that I didn't do that? Can you really say that I don't have the best sounding version of Kind of Blue? And can you really say that I didn't put it in a teapot and put it into orbit? You can't. So you can't argue with me. So I'm right.
Yeah. That's just that's the level of anti-intellectual nonsense that unfortunately the audiophile community has in many ways embraced. And the audiophile manufacturers quite often support that. I'd say at least half of them do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
anyway, buddy, I think I'm tired of talking about this one. You ready to wrap it up and do some credits?
Yeah, I'd like to do some credits, and let's okay, look, it's a Butterburger production, blah, blah, and you're going to edit it and all that. But the most exciting credit is the fact that we got some music that we did not compose or perform.
Yeah, it's our friend Mike Gaughn, who I worked with at Cinelux, and I believe you worked with at Sound and Vision.
Sound and Vision, yeah.
A lot of people know him from his time at the Absolute Sounds, but anyway, he's got a little demo album that he's put out at on Bandcamp. Not necessarily to be considered a finished product. It's not professionally mixed and mastered and all of that, but he just put it out there as sort of demos to let people know, hey, like if you need some music composed, hit me up. So we're going to provide a link to the entire Bandcamp in the show notes. But yeah, we picked a couple of musical selections and used those as bumper music this episode. Although it's not the music you're hearing right now. This is clunky. This is still Brent.
Yeah,
but the other two, the two previous tunes that you heard, those were Mike Gaughn. And like I said, check the show notes. We'll have a link to the entire album. And hope you dig it.
Yeah, and we still have one Patreon segment left to go.
That's true.
So Patreon people can dig that, or at least listen to it. I hope they dig it.
Yeah. What are we talking about again for patrons?
We're talking about John Darko's quote-unquote review of the Musical Fidelity X-Tube tube buffer thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the experience he had with it, the deeply musical, it touched his soul.
Nice. All right. Well, patrons, stick around for that. But everybody else, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate each and every one of you. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. Here's to 2 more years, man.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us, or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.